Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Future Leader Sessions. I'm super excited to have such an amazing panel on this episode today. This is the 12th episode of Future Leader Sessions, designed for future leaders, getting insights by real leaders that are going to be sharing their top tips and talking from experience. The wealth of knowledge that is going to be on this session today, guys, is incredible. You would never be able to get coaching one-on-one with such an amazing group, but you're getting it right now in this session today. Today, we're going to be talking about starting strong and leading in a new job. I want to say welcome to everybody who's joining us in the Zoom room. And welcome to everybody as well who is joining us on LinkedIn. We had over 1,000 people register for this episode today. So it's definitely an interesting one for you all. And of course, it's really timely because it's September. It's that time of year where people have come back from summer and they're jumping in to their new roles. We're going to be centralizing all of our communication through Slido. If I jump to the next page, if you scan this QR code, it's going to take you live to Slido. You'll also see Slido you can access as well on your web browser if you want to. We'll be dropping the link in the chat in a second for you to do that. Or you can join on mobile by scanning this QR code. And this is where essentially we're going to be centralizing all the communication, all the questions, and where you're going to have the chance to be interactive with our panel. So if you're not familiar to the way that Slido works, there are already some questions that have been pre-registered by some of you as you've signed up. I want you to have a scroll through those questions and give a thumbs up to the questions you like the look of. In the second half of today's episode, I'm going to be going into those questions in a live fire Q&A round, and I'm going to be starting with the most popular questions first, so make sure you give them a thumbs up. When you're scrolling through, if there's a question, a burning question you have, you want the answer to, you want somebody on this panel to give you their insights, and it's not already mentioned in the list, add your question in. If you're shy, you can add it in anonymously, so you don't even need to tell us your name. I will be responsible for reading out the questions, but you will have the chance to get the answers from a panel of leaders who are really renowned and experienced in this space. Stay with us as long as you can. Make sure you get the maximum value from the session. We will be following up, asking for some feedback and ideas for the next session. So for as long as you guys keep telling us that you want these sessions, we will continue to do them. And you guys are the ones that help us shape the topics of the future sessions. So please keep an eye on your inbox to let us know what you want us to be talking about with our next panel. I think that's all the housekeeping done. I'm going to jump over across to the Slido for you all to have a little play and have the chance to join. So if you scan this QR code, you will be able to access Slido. And I think we're going to actually just give it a little test. I'm going to do the same on my side to make sure that it's working. It is. Just a second. I'm opening it up now. Brilliant. So we're going to just do a quick test to make sure the Slido is working for everybody. So the question is, where are you joining from? We've had 1,000 people register for today's session. I want to know, what kind of audience have we got? Where are you guys sitting? Let us know the country in the Slido and hit send, and I will be welcoming you in. Let's have a look. Okay, so I can tell immediately we've got a hugely international group. I can see Norway, I can see Switzerland, I can see Portugal. Hello, Switzerland. A very big Switzerland has just come up on my screen. So I think we've got quite a few people in Switzerland. We've got Israel, we've got UK, we've got Spain, we've got the Netherlands. I'm feeling a little bit like a Eurovision presenter right now, shouting out all the countries. But I want to welcome you all, and I hope that you get immense value from the session. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to bring our panel up onto the screen for them all to introduce themselves. So I'm going to ask first, Diogo, why don't you start us off?
So good afternoon, morning, evening, everyone. My name is Diogo Geraldes. I am from Portugal. I live in the UK. I am a director for regulatory strategy at Veeva, which is a tech provider, software provider for life sciences, both MedTech and pharma, for all stages of the medical device development, from clinical studies to post-sales and patient and post-market surveillance. Before I joined Veeva, so I've been at Veeva for just under 2 years. I'm coming to 2 years in 20 days. But before I joined Veeva, I used to work at different notified bodies, where I did conformity assessments for implantable devices. And before that, I used to design custom orthopedic implants for children with bone tumors and do research at the same time. So nice to meet you, everyone.
Thank you, Diogo. So you've really got a lot of different perspectives to be able to share with us, and starting strong is definitely something that you're going to be able to speak to. Next on my screen, I see is Akivia.
Hi, my name is Akivia Rivera. I work as the Senior Director of Quality for Philips. I look after the MRI business unit. I've been in this job for, I think, a week over a year. So my anniversary was not so long ago. And before that, I was been in medical device all my life, and I worked for Teledyne. Before that, I was in Philips for about 3.5 years. And before that, I was in New Zealand working for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare. And before that, I was in Mexico. That's where I'm from. In Mexico, I was doing mainly manufacturing quality. So yeah, that's currently living in the Netherlands.
Wow, that's a really international experience that you've got, Akivia. So I'm super interested as well to hear your perspective on starting strong in different countries as well as different companies. Next, let's go over to Andrew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew. Currently, I'm the head of quality international at Genesis MedTech International. So our company operates in the space of laparoscopic surgical instruments, vascular intervention, structural heart. So I have about 23 years of experience in the medical device space. I've done, design assurance in the manufacturing, QA, and now I'm providing the strategic, QA piece for the international business to help the business, grow internationally. So I guess what makes us common here is we all work in the medical space where UDI codes, IFU, CAPA complaints, keep our world turning. I hope, what I and my fellow panelist speakers could offer you today is some kind of, tips to help you turn your first week of awkwardness into momentum in the subsequent months in your new role. So I hope if today goes well, you will leave with a plan. If it goes really well, your team will wonder if you have secretly been there for years. So that's my objective today.
That's exactly the goal. Thank you, Andrew. And last but not least, let's go over to Javier.
Hello, my name is Javier Castillo. I am the head of quality and regulatory affairs for INBRAIN Neuroelectronics. I'm based in Spain. The company is based in Barcelona. I'm based in Madrid, working hybrid. And yeah, my role in INBRAIN started 3 years ago. I joined INBRAIN in July 2022. And before that, I've been in different leadership roles, managerial roles in the medical device industry for quality and regulatory mostly. So yeah, I expect to bring some insight on also the change between multinational, startup, and back to multinational and back to startup.
Yeah, really interesting, because this is a question that we're always asked about, what's the difference between working in a big company versus a startup? So I'm really happy that you're able to bring that perspective. Okay, cool. So we've got introductions out of the way. I'm going to hit you all with my first question. I would like everybody to give me their perspective on this question, because I think it's a really important one. And that's all about the first 90 days. So you hear about 90-day plans, and you hear about making sure that you put them together, and that you run really fast in the first 90 days. But I actually would like to know really practically from each of you, what is the one thing that every leader should do to start strong in the first 90 days? So Andrew, I'm going to go over to you first because you're nodding your head.
Right. So the guiding principle or the mantra of mine to guide me through the first 90 days is always, learn fast and effectively. Win small. So don't look for, big goals. Look for the small ones that you can tackle and resonate with the people that you work with. And also, lastly, share credit. So don't hold on all the credits to yourself and say that I've done the impossible. So these are the piece of advice that I would provide.
Thank you, Andrew. Akivia, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. You have to start listening. You have to learn a lot. A very practical way that I describe it is that if you have a problem, you usually start with problem definition. You collect data, you organize that data, then you do your root cause analysis and try to come up with a plan. So that's what the 90 days are for. So you if you treat it like that, it gives you a better chance of success. So gathering data instead of having to look at a machine and a spreadsheet, you talk to people. You engage with them. You try to figure out what's their perception of the quality team or the product. and be open and receptive to everything that comes your way.
Yeah, so basically observe, listen, and build that network internally in the first 90 days. Yeah, really good, really nice. Diogo, so you've started strong, but in a number of different contexts, right? So what advice have you got for us?
Yeah, so I subscribe to everything everyone has said so far. I would maybe add that you will never have as much time to do your own stuff as you have in your first 90 days. Because your job is just starting, just if you're in a leadership position, just setting your priorities and getting to know your team. Eventually, after 90 days, you will be hands on deck, trying to solve those problems and bringing those products to market, right? So take that as a time to really understand the history behind the company where we work, the culture, the products you work for or you try to bring to market, and why you are as a company where you are, but also meet people and stakeholders all across the organization. Because to getting products to market, whether it's in tech, medical devices, research, doesn't matter. It takes a village. It requires cross collaboration and understanding of every single department. You will not have the bandwidth to understand how clinical works when you're doing your regulatory submissions. You will not have the understanding to understand. You're not going to be able to understand how manufacturing controls work when you're doing your kappa analysis. So take that time to go through that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point as well. That's true that the first 90 days, you're kind of easing into it, right? And that's really the time for yourself to listen, to learn, to ask questions before you really jump into problem solving. And Javier, what have you got to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, my colleagues have been thorough in the things that they would recommend. I would agree with all of them. I would add that you need to also make sure that you communicate back. So not only understanding, listening, and learning about the organization and the goals and so on, but also making sure that they understand your role, they understand your mission, your vision, what are your goals, and that kind of exchange always promotes this identification of goals that you might achieve in this first 90 days. So it's good that you share that perspective with the different colleagues that you engage with in the first 90 days.
Yeah, that's really important because first impressions also matter as well. And this is your chance to actually impact that by saying, okay, this is what I'm here to do, and this is what I'm trying to achieve in that time, and start to build that connection as well with your team and with your colleagues and stakeholders. So really, really good point. I love that. Okay, so then the next thing that I want to talk about is like literally navigating a new company culture. So what tips do you have for like how can you go about navigating a completely new company culture? I'm gonna start with Diogo because I know that obviously having worked in notified body industry and now like tech company, it's all really, really different. So what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, I've learned a lot of things. So I've started strong like 4 or 5 times already. I've changed my career a few times, and I've enjoyed every start. Every start has come with a culture shift and shock. As I said, I've gone from a very small company to a large multinational. I've gone from an American corporation, then to a Norwegian corporation, back to American. And recently I moved from a notified body in regulatory world to a tech company. Notified bodies, for example, and regulatory are highly technical places where there's a lot of emphasis put on the process and being precise and accurate, no matter how long it takes. And sometimes you lose a bit of the big picture. And when I moved to tech, I tend to say like, oh, I've only been 2 years at Veeva, but there's like 20 years in notified body life because the pace is so much fast, and like you are outcome driven. How you get to those outcomes is down to you, and of course everyone wants to do a good job, but we're not going to stop getting to those outcomes and spend overly spend time focusing on technicalities. So that's something I've learned.
Really, really interesting. Javier, what have you got to add to that?
Well, adapting to different company cultures is something that, I mean, you need to allow yourself to adapt to many different cultures. I've been in international companies or international environments in all my career roles, I believe, and you need to adapt your speech depending on what is the audience that you're having. So it's different to speak to someone in the Netherlands. They appreciate that you are very assertive, very direct. The US is always putting things nicely, but also going straight to the point. So it has to adapt to that, and I think that is something that you learn by training. I think it requires that you experience that and you have an opportunity to run that and test it and see how that works, because it varies a lot from different companies, different cultures, different even regions. I mean, it's a completely different thing.
Really valid point. And on the topic of kind of like international, I want to go to Akivia, because of course Mexico, US, Europe, Netherlands, you know, like that on top of also like new companies, that must have been an incredible learning experience for you. So what tips do you have for how can you quickly immerse yourself and get to grips with a new company culture?
I would say stay humble. Try to understand that you bring a lot of knowledge and learning and understanding, but they also have a lot of knowledge. They have a lot that they can teach you, and you can teach them. And you're the foreigner. That's what I always keep on reminding myself. In Mexico, we say, wherever you go, do as you see. So don't try to just impose your own ideas directly. I mean, eventually, especially as a head of quality, you will have to make tough decisions, but at the beginning, that's not the right time to be making those decisions. More about learning and understanding. And one thing that I would recommend is try to find a quick win, like everybody else. So my colleagues here are saying, and it could be something as simple as showing them how to use, I don't know, Excel, or something simple that shows that you're there for them, that you're not there for yourself or for your own gain. You're there for them. And that has worked for me in Mexico, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. And it also helped me because it was new country, new company, new everything. So I had to keep my head cold to make sure that I was not drowning in trying to figure out how to know my colleagues and how to get a driver's license, for instance. That was intense. But stay humble, keep your head cold, and don't take anything personal, I would say.
Really nice. Thank you. And Andrew, have you got anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've been very fortunate to be able to immerse myself into different cultures. I've worked for American companies for the longest period of time. I will also work for the European company. I used to work for a Dutch boss, right? And that is a big contrast, right, as compared to working for a US company. When I make presentations in a US company, I normally use very structured ways of going towards the conclusions. First, I have to introduce, who I am, what the matter is we are trying to solve, what research I've done, and gradually, concluding, what is the topic all about. And then when I, first worked for a Dutch boss, the Dutch boss, I used my American way of presenting to him, and then he said, "Cut the crap. Tell me what your conclusion is," right? And then I was so shocked, right? So I think the moral of the story is, you have to be very sensitive to the company's culture, and be open, right? And be willing to unlearn and learn the new etiquette at the workplace. And also another example that I would like to share with you is, sometimes in a company, whoever that is loudest, you would think that that's the ultimate decision maker. But in some companies, the more silent person is actually the the one behind the scene making decisions. So how do you sense it? You have to really be humble, like what Akivia say, and really unlearn whatever that you know about the corporate in the past and try to learn new stuff. So that's my experience.
I love the direct example as well. That really brought it to life for me. I can just imagine you in a room with the Dutch guy going, "Cut the crap."
Yeah, go
Diogo,
to the conclusion.
get to the conclusion. Diogo, have you got something to add?
Yes, I have something to add, which is like it's really nice. Like we all need to adapt to new cultures and new companies and the company's cultures as well, not just the country where you work. But at the same time, never forget who you are, because in the end, companies are a collection. They should not be monocultural, right? You have something to bring, and you have been hired because you are special in that specific way, and don't be shy of showing that too. And if it goes sometimes against the cultural grain, whether it's country wise or company wise, so be it, right? I think provided there is not doesn't go against your objectives, you'll be welcome. The other thing I wanted to kind of touch upon is we talked about countries, we talked about pace. Also, size matters when you're in a small, and maybe Javier can then add on to this, but like when you're in a small company, you usually join, you're very close to the goal, whether it's the patient you're treating or the market you're serving or the product you're delivering. When you're in a large company, the priorities are different, naturally, right? You're in a very small gear on a very large mechanism, and that also matters. Like you, and that will affect the way you see and the way you see your role and how your role can affect as well the company where you work. So be mindful of that.
So the next question that I have is around establishing credibility. So you're starting in a new company, you've been hired by someone because you've got a great CV, you've impressed everybody in the interviews, and now you're in front of someone, maybe it's a stakeholder, maybe it's someone in your team, and obviously they don't know you, maybe they don't know the details of your CV. So and maybe, I don't know, maybe they didn't even know you were being hired. Sometimes that stuff happens. How do you go about establishing credibility and building that relationship, building that respect and trust with someone that you don't know, that you've never worked with before? Javier, have you got something to say for that one?
Yeah, I would say that my recommendation for that would be consistency and transparency. When I mentioned the communication piece in the beginning, you need to have a plan. You need to join the company with a goal in mind in terms of what is your role and how you're going to fill it. Of course, you need to adapt it as you learn from the company, but you can communicate that plan and can build trust by communicating transparently to your peers and to your teams to see where you're pointing or where you're going in terms of what is your plan to join that organization. Sometimes, I mean, it's just finding the synergies, like the clinical team also has some goals, and you learn that as you are being onboarded or in this introductory sessions with them, and then you find a way to kind of collaborate there, and that establishes a quick relationship that later on can build a very solid trust. So I tend to see the point of view of others when I join and communicate to them in that way, so we can establish a good understanding between each other, and that helps building trust and also credibility.
So when it comes to like introducing your plan, because you've spoken about this a few times,
Yeah,
I'd love if you could make it real for me. So
yeah.
let's say like I'm a colleague or someone, and you're new, Javier, in my company, in Elemed, or whatever. How would you go about kind of communicating your plan to someone?
So the first thing that you need to understand is the company priorities or the company objectives that you have in your scope. Typically, you would learn that during your interviews process, or even in your first days, you would learn the details of it. So I create my own strategy based on that. As Diogo mentioned, you have the time at the beginning, so you invest that time on planning that part of your onboarding or that part of your first 90 days, and you try to align the strategic goals based on behaviors or the values of the company, and having that built in a very I would say compelling way. So considering all the point of views that you can impact or influence during your first 90 days is very different in a startup or a multinational company. But addressing those goals is something key, and it's not that you need a very detailed plan. You need to understand the mission, and you need to understand your goals and see how that impacts others. And that is what you should try to communicate in this first 90 days when you are in that onboarding period.
And Andrew, what have you got to add to that?
Right. So to earn trust, I always work on three things. So one is competencies, which is linked to learning. So I have to build my competencies, over time. So don't rush into trying to show your competencies on day one, because people will think that, a person who knows everything actually knows nothing, right? So
Yeah.
competencies is what I will continue to work on. And then second thing is, as a leader, right? What people actually are attracted the most to the leader is you have to show that you care, right? So this is where I think the emotion side of yours, right, should attach to what is at stake, what is important for the team, for the company. So you have to really, show, right, purposely, why you are doing certain stuff, or why are you encouraging people to do something. And then the third thing is, of course, somebody call it, political savviness, or, I actually call it, how reliable are you as a person? So this is where I will make sure I often communicate to my peers, the key decision makers, to make sure, it's not just I myself are charging forward with my team, but I also have a team of people to support, me and my team if needed. So this is where, people will think that you are reliable, people manager, right, or leader.
So it comes down to that communication flow as well, of just making sure that
Sure.
like you're not kind of like siloed with your team, um,
Yeah.
building the relationship there, but you're also building the relationships
Yeah.
horizontally and also vertically by communicating and explaining a little bit more what's
Right.
going on, what the priorities are, and what you're doing. Really nice.
And there's one more thing I want to add on, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Trust sometimes, right? You just need, time for it
Yeah.
to flourish. So don't try to put yourself into a position whereby you force people to trust you, because believe me, the more you want it, the more you don't get it. So sometimes, it's okay to take a step back, to say, okay, I don't earn this person's trust, but let me try, harder. Yeah.
And build it over time, of course.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it's all about when it comes to relationships. Javier, you got something to say?
Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you to Andrew, because that is an important thing when you are trying to communicate to others in terms of your plans, your strategy. The why is the most important thing. They need to understand how that is under processed by your way of thinking, and how that aligns with the company goals, with others' goals, and how that is building for the common interest of the organization.
Akivia?
Yeah, it just I reminded me something that it was very common in New Zealand. So you just used to say you have to make sure that you cover the whiffing. And I was
The
like, the
whiffim. I was
whiffing.
thinking about the whiffim. I was thinking about,
So the
okay,
what's in it for
I live
me? Yes.
there.
For
Yeah.
me, that was completely new concept, and they just kept on using the whiffim and the whiffim, and I was like, I thought it was something, I don't know, something New Zealand there, but I started just talking about it and Philips, and now I think people are starting using it, because it is important that you can describe the why, in the sense that what it means for me, but you need to make sure that you adapt your message to what it means for them. So that's why it's very clear that it needs to be using that lens of the with them, the what's in it for me. I find it very, very useful every time.
I love that. It's actually a sales technique. Did you know? So it's something that salespeople will typically use, or people that are in roles that involve a lot of communication skills. And it is what's in it for me, but not for me, the speaker, but for the person that you're trying to kind of pitch your idea to. And even if you're not actually pitching something, even when you're talking about your plan or your objectives, or you in this role, every interaction is kind of like a loose pitch. And so the more you can put yourself in the shoes of the other person and speak from their perspective, so what benefit do they gain from you being in this role? What benefit do they gain from you achieving these goals? How are you going to help them move, make them look good in front of their bosses and move their goals forward? The more you can talk to that rather than the benefit to you, the more convincing you will be, and the easier it will be for them to kind of like you, buy from you, be convinced by you. That's the psychology side behind it. So thanks for bringing that up, Akivia, because I was actually thinking it right in my head. Diogo, what do you have to add to this?
I have to add to what Akivia just said, and then add, maybe throw in another thing into the bucket. But basically, yes, I agree. If you, I'm particularly me. I'm in a role where I don't have direct line reports, but I do strategy. So I try to influence product decisions, try to influence the way we go to market, and try to also influence the way our product is implemented and is done with our customers and maintained. And this is all through influencing, meaning I'm constantly pitching ideas and the reason as to why maybe things need to change or things need to improve or can be improved. So that's a really important thing. Now to add another one, to build trust, I would say execution, right?
Yes.
When you're starting, execute well always, particularly when you start. You show your competence. I'm not saying over execute. Definitely don't under execute. Of course, if you have the ability, do it to the best of your ability. Don't also start by giving 150% and people assuming that 150% is your natural base, because you will burn out, right? So within your capabilities, always deliver and well to good quality. People eventually will notice that your work is good and your work is timely, and the trust builds. You have to earn the trust. You can't just say trust me. That's not going to work, as Andrew said.
I think you make a really, really valid point, Diogo, as well. And maybe the Elemed team can actually look for the study that I'm about to reference. But I remember reading an article that spoke about how you show up in the first period is the most important. If you, for example, if you're late for the first meeting, even if you're on time for all the other meetings, you will always be remembered as the person that was late for the meetings. Like it's very sticky, especially at the beginning. And so when it comes to execution, if you say you're going to do something, do it, and especially at the beginning, because then you will be remembered as the person that does what they say they're going to do. Even if later on down the line you have conflicting priorities and something slip, you will be remembered as the person that actually executes, because those first impressions, they really, really do count. So that there's so much we can talk about on this. I want to go to the next question, but before I do that, for everybody who's listening to us on LinkedIn and on Zoom that may have joined us a little bit late, I want to let you know that we are going to be jumping into a live Q&A later on in the session. I'm just trying to share my screen. You should be able to see a QR code on this screen. If you scan that QR code, it's going to take you to Slido. Slido is going to be where we're going to ask and answer as many questions from the audience as we can in our quick fire round. So if we're talking and you're having questions popping up in your mind that you want us to make sure we're speaking to, please add them. If you don't have any questions, please have a little scroll through the questions that other people have asked and give a thumbs up to the ones that you think are really important. We will be addressing these questions in the most popular first, all the way to the least popular. So in order to make sure everybody's getting the most value from the session, I need you guys to look into the Slido, give a thumbs up and add your own questions, albeit anonymously. If you don't want to share your name, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to be the one reading out the questions anyway. Okay, let's jump back into the questions that I have prepared for our speakers. So I got a really nice question, okay, which is, so how can you approach colleagues who feel entitled after performing your role on an interim basis? I think this is a really interesting political question, and one that I'm sure everybody is going to want to hear your advice on. And if any of you have examples to share as well, lived experiences, that would be really, really helpful. So I'm going to go first to Andrew.
Right. It happened to me a few times, so I think I'll speak from my experience. So I think the most important thing to do, right, is to go into that role and try to learn, what has worked in the past and what is not working. And a lot of time in senior leadership role, you would have already been briefed, what is not working. But however, I think what is lacking is, they don't tell you, what has worked in the past, right? So you really have to really, collect all these things that work in the past well, and to give this credit, right, to those incumbent or those people who has, taken the role before you, and thank this person, right, for those achievements. And after you have done that, I think in the execution part, I would create, what I call the co-own period, where, maybe it can be 30 days or 60 days, where, he or she and I myself will co-own that function or a certain objective that has been, ink out, in the past. And the reason for that, right, is a handover, right? You need to make sure you learn everything that you need to from this person, and also to build this, good vibe, right, with this person, and this takes times. And after this 60 days, period is gone and you are on your own, I think it is also important to list down all the roles and responsibility, right? That differentiate yourself and your predecessor, right? Otherwise, having need to have two persons to step into the gray zone is not very healthy. So the clarity of that RACI is equally important. So these are the three phases that I will normally do.
Thank you, Andrew. Javier?
Um, it's a tricky one. I mean,
Yeah.
not only not only an interesting, but also a tricky one. First of all, you need to know that that happens, because it's not typically something that they tell you, like or something that your team is going to tell you. So um, sometimes it's good to understand that even in the interview process, like why is this role being created? Is this a new role? Is this a replacement role? Is this and then when you join, you need to fill the room sometimes to see in what is the history of that. Typically, your manager or whoever has been leading the group on an upper level should provide some hints, but it is difficult to understand that, and it happened to me a couple of times. So it's always it's always a tricky situation that needs to be handled with care. I would say that it's also a matter of doing the same exercise as you do with other peers, like making other people understand why. If there's been a change in the role, if it's been a replacement because someone has been doing the job, but the seniority that they were looking for is slightly different. You need to make that, and at least I tried, and I believe that I managed to be successful on that. But it is a difficult thing to take care of, I would say.
And I like that you really address kind of like trying to get that background during the interview process. And you
Yeah.
highlighted some really good questions to be asking during that interview process. And one that I would really recommend as well, one that I ask when we get briefed on a job, is the first question that I ask the hiring manager, like, is there nobody internally that could take this job? Like, why do you have to go external to hire this? Because I think it speaks a lot about what that dynamic is going to be when you're coming into that role. And if there's somebody that perhaps had kind of like stepped up to do this role, but then they hired you, and because they determined that that person actually wasn't like fully capable to do that role, that's going to be a very interesting dynamic of somebody to have in your team. And so that's important information that you kind of need to know for when you're starting. So you make some really valid points there. Akivia, I know you had something to add to this.
Yes, it has happened to me 2 times. And in one case, the employee was very unhappy. Actually wanted to take some like revenge, I will say.
Oh wow.
He tried to prove that the decision was incorrect. So we were both kind of went through the interview process, but he was internal and I was external. And he was doing the job. He did the job for a long time. And in another case, there was an ad hoc or that interim person put in place, and it was very clear since the beginning this is at a higher seniority level that we're looking for. And so in one case, I was welcomed with open arms and was like, I'm so happy you're here. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed. And in another case, it was like shutting all the doors. And what I've learned is that you need to acknowledge their feelings. You need to acknowledge that they might be angry, upset, and they have probably every right to have it. When, in my experience, I went through the angry person, he had never received proper feedback. And so he was in the dark. He was really not, yeah, he was being giving positive feedback all this time with good intentions, but really didn't help him. So I got to acknowledge his feelings and help him through the process. At the end, he was reporting to me. So I had to help him evolve and develop, and eventually help him realize that he was just not happy overall in the company. And it was better for him to start finding something that will make him absolutely happy. And when he got over that and he accepted, he was performing fantastically. So that was really good. And then he found a very good job at another company. And the person that was overwhelmed and was very happy to see me, is also important to recognize that the person is overwhelmed, is just too much, and also knows that he's doing all this extra work for nothing basically at the end. So I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that she was recognized. Like the whole time she was recognized, that everything that she did, it was her work, not me. I arrive and I can collect some of the gains, but I'm not gonna take the credit. It was her, and I make everything possible. So then people see it, and maybe there's an opportunity within the company, and then she can grow in that direction.
Really nice, and thanks for sharing your lived experience as well, because that sounds like two challenging scenarios that you managed to turn around and find a solution to. So we've got a couple of minutes until we're going to go to our live Q&A. If you've joined us in the Zoom room, that you will see in the chat that there's a link to open Slido where you can start to see some questions coming in, where you can upvote those questions. If not, I will be sharing my screen after the next question so that you can open Slido as well if you're joining us on LinkedIn, for example. But if you also are on LinkedIn, have a little look around the event page. There probably will also be the link to the Slido there that you can access in case you want to open it on your browser. Okay, I've got one more question then that I want to ask, and then we'll go into live Q&A. So I'm going to ask, how do you handle conflict when you're new in a job? Diogo.
Okay, that's a very good one, and it's probably a very likely one in general. You know, there will be conflicts in life, particularly when, you know, people have different approaches, or there's an established approach to doing things that doesn't match the one that you want to pursue. So after you build your plan and you've observed and you've understood how the company works, what doesn't work, what could be improved, what would you do differently, you go about, as Javier said, explaining your reasons as to why you think a different approach should be taken. This has happened to me too as well, and when I clashed with someone whose work impacted mine and vice versa, they had a very clear idea of how I should be going about doing my role, and I explained to them why I think the approach I should follow, not that person, would be different, playing to my strengths, right? They didn't like it, but eventually I convinced them that in the end, we're driven by the same outcome. And that's the important bit. We're both professionals, and we're both trying to achieve the same thing. And you're going at it from your way, with your experience, and whatever works for you, I'll go at it whatever works for me. And these are the reasons why. If they don't work, I'm very open to revise and review my approach and take on board further feedback. Of course, it's always good to sound your strategy with your peers, with your boss, or mentor, or people in similar roles in different parts of the business. So validate that approach before you follow, because then when things don't work out, then you're on the hook for it, right?
Yeah. Andrew, what's your perspective?
Yeah, so I think all senior leaders, play a very important role that I call it bridging. So bridging is no other than, making two ideas that appears to be very, separated, doesn't gel together to one. And I agree with Diogo fully, right? First, we have to tell them and sell the idea of, what our common objectives are. But I think, we also have to sell to them, right? What is at stake. So this is a little bit like a fierce, strategy, right? Other than telling them, what we should be aiming for, we should also tell them what is at stake. Sometimes, we have to sell the idea of the stake at the personal level, at the company level. Of course, we don't, talk about the personal stake, openly. So there's a lot of conversation that's required, in the group setting, in the private setting with them, to let them understand, right? There's actually a beautiful, a patch of grass out there, right? That's the objective. And also, if you don't do it, right, what is at stake? So this is the piece that I will share.
And what in your experience, Andrews, what are like the examples of things that could be at stake?
Sure. I think, at the personal level, of course, image is very important, just like what you say, right? If the person, get late in the first meeting, they will always be remembered as a person that get late. So, as a very senior leader, right, I think we should, help people to reshape that image. And this is very often that I use, right, at the personal level to say, okay, so if you do this, or if you generate results in this, aspect, you will, change people's perception about you, right? And also, so to build this camaraderie, you need to do this type of stuff with them very
Mhm,
often.
mhm. And so that's an example at the personal level, and at a company level or at a kind of broader level, what things would be typically at stake? What would you make reference to?
Um, Of course, the most immediate stuff that we can relate to at the company level is if there's a bidding process, right? So if we don't come to agreement, especially quality and regulatory function is always a blocker, right? So if there's a blocking force, right, that goes against, right, the company in that successful bidding, then, the company will lose in millions, and this is something that you can lay down in facts, right? So this is, how the people can feel, what is at stake, right? And
Mhm.
nobody ever wants that, I'm pretty sure.
No, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. Okay, so we're running really fast. It's already 20 past. So we're going to jump into the live Q&A. So get yourselves ready, get a glass of water, have a little sip. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to have a break while I explain how the next part of the session is going to run for everybody who is joining us on Zoom and on LinkedIn. So I'm going to share my screen, and you are going to see a QR code on your screen. So if you don't already have this open, scan this QR code and open it up. And it's going to take you to a Slido where there are already a bunch of questions in there. If you have a question that's burning that we haven't yet covered, don't be afraid to add that question in. You can do it anonymously. Everybody here that's listening is going to have the chance to see that question. And the questions that are the most burning questions are going to get upvoted. So if you don't have a question to ask, that's fine. Just have a little scroll through and upvote the ones that you think are really good questions that you want to hear from our panel on. And I will be addressing those questions from the top down. So without further ado, I think we should just jump into it. Now, panel, don't worry. We are going to have the Elemed team drop the questions as well in the chat. So you can read the questions, and I'm going to read them out as well, because of course you haven't seen these questions before. If you can answer it, please jump in and answer it. Otherwise, I'm just going to throw it to someone. If somebody has answered the question and you've got something to add that's a different perspective, please also add that perspective. So without further ado, we've got a really strong question to start with from Anonymous, which is, how do you rebuild trust and make a team function again after they've dealt with toxic leadership? I'm going to read it again. How do you rebuild trust and make a team function again after they've dealt with toxic leadership? Akivia.
Yeah, a few times also in my career. I think the most important will be to show up for them and to prove that you're there to help them. For instance, what I do very often is I join meetings with my teams, with my direct reports. And then what happens is that the meeting starts sending all the questions to me. And for the first 90 days or longer, if I can, I deflect all the questions to my team member. So then I can see how he or she performed, how he or she answers, and then I coach them on the side. And then I tell them exactly, okay, this time I will take it or I will do it. You show. If you don't know how to do it, you see how I do it. Then next time you do it, and I will help you. And then I consistently show up that I will actually help them and I will get them to achieve their goals. The other thing is feedback. Feedback is a very important tool that, at least in my experience, a toxic leader will not give effective feedback. They will just blame or point fingers, or even only give positive feedback that makes people heads go bigger, but they don't really understand what is happening. So I give them very accurate, effective, data-driven feedback. And I prefer to focus on actionable feedback. So for instance, if somebody is going through a problem that they are not, like, I don't know, R&D or the company policy or something happens, then I will say, okay, that's out of your control. We're not going to focus on that. Yes, okay, there was a problem. It was not performed. Let's not focus on that because that's not in your control. Let's focus on the things that you can control and you can do something about it. And at least in my experience, people take some time to get over the finger pointing and blaming game in a toxic culture. And you have to help them always, like, okay, yeah, this other person did something, but I'm not managing that person, I'm managing you. So how do you contribute to the problem? What's your piece of the pie? I always say, let's focus on your piece of the pie, because that's the one that you can control. And it's piece by piece, little by little, showing up and making sure that they are seeing that you're there for them, they can trust you.
And then hearing them and keeping them focused on the things that are within their control, and keeping it almost like positively framed, because also like negativity is one of those poisons, right, that can kind of spread very quickly, and it's about kind of keeping it in a positive view inside of someone's control. I really like that. Javier, what have you got to say for that one?
Yeah, it happened to me once. I mean, I joined a team, and the culture there was just a bit off. I mean, it was a too dictatorship style leader, and the positive thing is that the company was already trying to move away from there. But yeah, I joined the team, and it's true that it might seem like a good opportunity because, I mean, you try to implement a culture that is less, or at least less toxic, or I'm not sure if your style would be like the ideal for your team, but you try to adapt to your team and have the best solution for them. But it is something also difficult, and it requires time, as Akivia was mentioning, because you are automatically perceived as in the package of the culture of the company. So you need to allow time to change that, to give the space to, you know, like in this case, what I had to do is I had to delegate, I had to recognize, I had to make the team believe in themselves, because they were like completely blocked by this kind of culture, and that it took a lot of time. So it has its pros and cons.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go to the next question. So the next question is, how can you ask for feedback early on without appearing unsure or inexperienced? Diogo.
I'd just like to start by answering my answer by saying that feedback does not equate being unsure or inexperienced. Feedback is normal. We need to get feedback in order to improve or reassure to ourselves that we're going down the right path. 360 feedback is really important. I often give unsolicited, often positive feedback to people I work with, and sometimes for little things like, you know, admin issue that was fixed quickly. I find who their boss manager is, say, this person was excellent. They did it so quickly. It made my life so much easier. And I expect that from my managers too. And if I know people don't like giving feedback all the time, so I do ask as a way of gauging. Is particularly in the beginning, is my approach correct? Do you buy into what I'm doing? Does it make sense to you? Am I going down the right path? Please tell me, because otherwise I can't correct. And then by the time you're asking me to correct, it'll be too late. So I'll like kind of push back on the question and say, ask for feedback early and always.
Akivia.
Yeah, I would recommend that you keep in mind that everybody else is also feeling unsure and unsafe. And what I do is try to phrase the request as something that I want to get better for them. Like, I will ask them, is there anything else that I can do for you? Is there anything that I could improve? Anything I could do better so I can show up better for you? And then that way is like, okay, we're tackling our own insecurities together, and we're there for each other. And so that makes it easier for people to say, oh, if it's for me, then I will tell you. And then they'll tell you their honest feedback. So at least in my experience, that works quite well.
I really like that. Andrew, have you got anything on this topic?
Yes. So what I'm going to say is appearing unsure might not be an entirely bad thing for the leaders, because this is where you start to show the humility, right, to the team to say, I ask for feedback because I don't know. And sometimes this will actually, make the team, feel better about you. But actually, there's a pitfall because if you are feeling unsure or giving that sense that you're unsure all the time, that's the problem, right? So, but if you ask for feedback, starting with very little knowledge about certain topics, but as you gain that knowledge, in the digesting or analyzing those feedback, people will actually start to trust you a lot.
Yeah. And yeah, it's I know some amazing leaders who like very openly say like they don't have the answers, I don't know the answer to that. And I have an amazing team that have the answer. And so also it's about really understanding your role. Your role as leader is not to like have the answer to everything and be the technical expert and the leader and the manager and the coach and literally everything. It's really, really understanding your role within the organization and then making sure that you're showing up for that role and then empowering the rest of the team. And also people, from my experience, people quite like to give like to ask, if you're asking someone for their expertise or their opinion or their thoughts, they actually quite like to have the space to actually be able to give that, because oftentimes people have feedback to give but they just don't want to give it, right? Like, so you kind of have to invite it in the right way to create that space for them to be able to share it, and you can totally do that without appearing like unsure or inexperienced, because that's a learning journey for everyone. Going to the next questions then, let's have a look. So how do you determine the development level of the members of your new team quickly when you are the new leader? How do you determine the development level of the members of your team quickly when you are the new leader? Anyone?
I can go. I can build on what I said before. Like, for instance, in those meetings where I invite my team members, so they make the decision, and I deflect all the decisions to them. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I'm not trained. I haven't actually completed my training to try to pass." But it's also to observe how they operate and how they perform. But talk to them. I think that will be the main thing. Talk to them, ask them about their experience, their knowledge, and some people are very eager. Like in some cases, they prepare presentations of this is all the things that I've done, and they're very proud of it. And so then I know, okay, this person has recognition as a main driver, for instance, and then I start understanding what are their needs, and then where are they in their career path, because it could be that that's as far as they want to go and they're happy. What kind of development are you gonna do? They're not willing. And in other cases, they're very eager and they really want to grow. So you have to talk to them, you have to understand where they see themselves. And those meetings, I find them very valuable, just to see my team making decisions and understand how they think on the go, like on the spot. It makes a big difference to understand, okay, is there anything that needs to be course corrected? If there isn't, then it's just about, okay, where do you see yourself? How do you want to proceed from there? That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. And Diogo?
Just like to add that I'm naturally an extroverted person that likes to express my opinions very clearly and often in meetings. But it took me a while to understand and to embed in me that not everyone is like this. And so you need to provide people with the opportunity to show. And the same way, like when you are judging people whether they comment or act quickly and surely on a matter. If you're around the table, the people who could be the better responders, for example, may not want to voice it in front of everyone else. So you have to give people room to also be able to express themselves and demonstrate to you in different formats how capable they are. And that's not just judge everyone by your own standards, right?
I really like that. Okay, so let's keep going. So how should a leader react when he or she is faced with a team that is not aligned with their vision? So that's a really interesting one, because I know that Javier was talking a lot about going in and communicating your plan and your goal. Has it ever happened to you that somebody has not been fully aligned, or actually later on they've shared with you that they've not been
Yeah.
fully aligned?
I mean, it's difficult that everyone is automatically aligned with the vision that you have. Sometimes you need to explain that. I mean, you also need to be adaptive, right? So when you join a new team, you have to understand what is the new team, and how they are motivated, or they're capable of what they're doing. So you need to understand their level of motivation, the level of capability, and based on that, you have to express your leadership role differently. So you may want to coach them, to manage them. So in terms of not having the alignment on the vision, it's important to understand why, giving them the space to explain that, to understand that, and also try to find a common ground, and see if that can be aligned somehow to motivate them again, because it's basically a motivational problem when they are not aligned in the vision of the department or the organization even. So it's a tricky one, but it's something that managing your adaptability to that should be, or I would say this is my recommendation to deal with that situation.
Diogo, what do you have to say?
I see a lot of large transformation projects at MedTech companies, and a lot of them fail, particularly the ones with our competitors. But and the reason why they fail is not the lack of technical ability or the software or the goal, is because of change management. Change is hard. It doesn't matter whether it's for a software organization, whatever it is. Change is hard, and the successful projects are the ones that are candid and open with everyone involved. They're not like some executive decision that gets pushed down, and then they wonder, why is no one using this software? Why is no one using this process? This is like a brilliant idea that we came up together in our little corporate retreat. That's not how it works. You need to bring people along. Why should you change? That's number one. Why do we need to change? Whether it's a project, whether it's leadership, whether it's vision, whether it's direction, and bring people along and convince them. There will always be a small percentage that are negative, do not want to change. Fine, you can deal with them separately, but you cannot let them affect the rest of the team. So yes, focus on change management, bringing people along, explaining why you're doing things, and what the I think Andrew mentioned the green grass at the end of the thing is like, so they can all drive together.
Thank you, Diogo. Akivia?
Yeah, I want to share recent, I would say, mistake that I did in trying to share my vision. So when in my previous roles, I had managed teams of about 25 to 30 people, but this role is in between 60 and 80 people, and it's a global role. So I have people in multiple countries. Also, this role was very different because I had to hit the ground running, and it was fully on. I had no time basically for my 90 days at the beginning. And by the time I communicated the vision, there was a large time that passed, and between my starting time and the vision. I communicated the vision in the way that I usually do. I did my analysis, I did my reviews, and so on. But people just didn't receive it very well, and I did it in a town hall in a big setting, which the thing that I realized, it was not personal. It was a one-way communication. It was a one-way explanation, and so I had to do follow-ups and basically cut it down to smaller groups so I could have the interaction and the coziness, I would say, so they can actually ask questions. At the end, I realized that a lot of people were on board with the vision, but considering that many leaders have come and take over this team, and they've come with their vision, but they actually didn't stick to it, and the vision was looking very nice on the slides, but then they were doing all kinds of stuff on the side. They just were not trusted. So the learning from me after this is like, okay, you might not have the time to think about it, and you have to think on your feet, but they still expect you to deliver it in a way that it's fully understood and it's catered for them, because the vision is for them and not for me. And the other thing is smaller groups where you can have the interaction and you can manage the different questions and the concerns, and the way that they're seeing it is probably the best way to look at it. Just cut it into smaller chunks. I had like 10, 15 people max in the group to be able to explain it and communicate it properly, and also different time zones, so people were not falling asleep and waking up. So
Yeah.
that was also what I realized, that I had to do that.
Thank you for sharing those lessons learned, because like sometimes it's from the mistakes, you know, and the reflection on making the mistakes that are like the biggest learnings, and actually having that like real experience of it. Sometimes when you feel the pain, you know, like you learn the best in the end. So thank you for sparing us all and allowing us to learn from your learnings. Let's go to the next one then. We still have some time left, but there's a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to get through everything, but let's do as many as we can. So what challenges or disappointments can leaders expect in their first 3 months on the job?
It depends on the job.
Okay.
Can I share something?
Sure.
So, as a senior leader, right, a lot of time when you are being hired into a job, I feel that, I don't know about you, they always expect, or the organization expect you to be you to be the superhero, to solve, you know, some problems that the company has not been able to solve for years and perhaps, you know, decades. So I think when those things are being thrown upon me or you, I think those can quickly, you know, go south, right? Because you know, if you state that as your goal and you are not able to achieve it, you know, a lot of time, you know, you will feel disappointed yourself, and then people will feel that, you know, this is not a strong leader, so this is the same as the predecessor, so what makes this person special, right? So how I deal with this type of problem is, you know, I have to be practical, pragmatic, right? Pragmatism is actually the key to try to, you know, get to a level, right, where you should, you know, still contributes towards that direction, but you have to set, you know, realistic goal, not just for yourself, but for the organizations, right? Don't throw this to a superhero, right? So that's what I would like to share.
And the setting of the goal is really important, and making sure that they're actually achievable, and that, like, you know, there's like a whole
Right.
training that can be done on like how to set like really good goals. But it needs to motivate people, and it needs to kind of stretch, but it also needs to be achievable as well for everybody. Otherwise, it can very quickly demotivate. Diogo.
Yeah, I can add to this, but based on the perspective what I see, a lot of you know, new leaders coming in with a mandate to overhaul QARA or RA or QA for a company, because, you know, there's a massive kappa and then product recalls and whatnot and billions of pounds being lost, and they come with experience and they come with these mandates and they come with these self-imposed expectations. Then they're going to change, you know, and companies have been around for 80 to 100 years, and with their own cultures and idiosyncrasies, and they're going to turn it around, and they'll all follow them into the sunshine. So that's not really what happens, and the first thing you're going to have is huge disappointment when you find out that everyone is fighting against you. So that's something you should be prepared when you start a new role, and actually ask people in there, what's the culture like? Are people embracing change? Are they really reluctant to change? Because one thing is a team or an employee or direct line report or manager that you can convince and bring around. Another thing is a whole company, and that's much, much harder to do.
That's a really good point around company culture. Great, let's keep going. So let's have a look. Now I'm going to quickly share my screen, because we keep having more questions coming in and more things liked with thumbs up. So guys, if you're watching us and you can scan this QR code, or if you're in the Zoom chat, our team's going to be dropping a link in the Zoom chat, because we're not going to get through all these questions. We've only got 20 minutes left, but I want to get through as many as we can. So maybe we can do kind of one person per answer now. Give a thumbs up to the questions that you really like the look of. And if there's any questions there that you haven't had the chance or that you want us to ask that aren't already covered, please add them. So the next one, how do you manage and realign expectations with the management team when they consistently push the QA/RA boundaries? Everybody smiles.
A difficult one.
Javier, tell
Yeah,
us.
that is something that it relates to the company culture. So it's important that you make sure that you are entering a company with the right culture before joining, but you are always going to be tested. So every management team is testing the boundaries of almost everything that is limiting the capability or the activity. So you need to listen, you need to acknowledge, you need to reflect on those questions, and you need to present why. Because it's a different type of communication when you go with upper management on rejection of certain activities. It needs to be explained with a business acumen and an understanding of what is at stake and what is pros and cons, what is the return, or what you were expecting out of that, because it is important for them to understand. It is, in that case, you need to adapt to the speech to an audience that is not knowledgeable about quality and regulatory, so you need to make them understand the reason behind. A challenging one always.
Really, really nice answer. There's another question here that's a really interesting one that I'd love to have your thoughts on, because of course we're talking here about how to start strong in a new job, and by default everyone on the screen here is in recruitment terms a perm employee. However, some people who are really, really good at starting strong really quickly and getting up to speed really quickly are contractors, because their whole job is get in and get active as quickly as possible. And so one of the questions here from John is, how do expectations differ between contractors and new full-time employees? So if you put your hats on as hiring managers with people in your team, how are your expectations different of people in your team that are maybe on the perm side versus a contractor that you're hiring to solve an immediate problem in terms of that first 90-day performance? Andrew, I'm going to go to you first because you're smiling, so it looks like you've got a story.
This happens, too often, isn't it? So my approach, right, when I manage my team, and there's always this, super brainy consultants that comes into the company with brilliant ideas, right? So I think I will challenge, the definition of strong, right? So I think they are definitely strong in generating ideas, right? And also revealing our blind spots, what we don't understand, what we don't understand. But I also want to make sure, and I actually did that in the past, right? To make sure eventually, if we need results, we need the perm staff and not the consultant. Consultants are not being hired to deliver. If you need to take on those good ideas and continue to generate, better results, we need our perm staff. So with this very deliberate and very engineered way of defining strength of these two teams, which sometimes can be seen as mutually exclusive, but this is where, with a good definition of strengths, you pull these two teams together, and then they eventually, generates the ultimate results.
It's really interesting because, of course, oftentimes we see even kind of within Elemed, because of course we have like both sides of the business, the perm and the contracts and consulting side, the challenge of knowledge transfer.
Yep.
Of, like you bring in a consultant with all these great ideas, and maybe they're there for a while, but then of course you have this kind of vacuum after they go. So just out of interest, how do you handle that knowledge transfer problem?
Well, as I mentioned, there's always this space that is that is about, what we don't know, and this is where the consultants, and can play a crucial role. But like what you said, right? We should not diminish or even, nullify the tribal knowledge that the team or the perm staff has built over years, because that's equally important, right? Without a good foundation, you can't build, the heavy weights, on top of the ground, right? This is where the consultants, comes in and said, why not you build something, on the ground? But we should not nullify, right, the tribal knowledge that has brought the organization to where they are, right? And that's the foundation, and that's always, concealed. A lot of people don't see it, but it's so important.
Yeah. You make a really valid point. So that's a really interesting question. So thank you, John, for putting that in there. Right, next. I'm gonna ask. Let's see, what else do we have in here that looks good? Okay. I'm gonna ask. Should you ever emulate or copy the management style of your predecessor to build trust? And is that even a good idea?
I don't think so. That's you are yourself. If you're not honest, you have problems for your whole career. So be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
But of course, you can learn from others. But
I would say respect tradition, but change it after to make it work for you, because also, I mean, impersonating other style is not something that might be very useful for you as a leader. So
I think I can't remember who mentioned it earlier on, but asking like what was that person doing well is definitely a good place to start, but then finding a way to incorporate that into your own style, if you're not kind of already doing something similar. But yeah, don't try and copy someone. And also, this is something we say to companies as well when they're hiring, because oftentimes it's really obvious, like when you're stepping into a role, right? As we just had this reaction, but you'd be surprised. Companies will sometimes look to hire the exact replica of the person that's like just left, or that they've managed out of the business, whichever one it is. And actually, everybody's unique and individual, but there's a reason why that person left, right? So if somebody's been with a company for 5 years and they get to 5 years and they feel that there's no progression because they've got to the top of their game and they've got nothing new to learn, you can't hire somebody that's at the same level as what that person was at the point of them leaving in 5 years' time, because then they're not going to stay in the organization. So it's really about making sure that like you're creating scenarios for people to be able to adapt, and to be able to grow. So yeah, that's just an aside from the recruitment side. I want to just give that input. Right, so next, how can you successfully communicate expectations as a leader to a new starter? So I know that, Javier, you were talking a little bit about talking about the plan, but I'm more interested here about expectations of people in your team. So like what you actually are expecting in terms of like how you want them to show up. I'm not directing this only at Javier, I'm directing this to anyone who wants to answer. But how do you actually have that conversation? Akivia.
Yeah, so I create a formal meeting that I call it the expectations meeting. So it's very clear what we're going to talk about. So the clarity, the transparency. And I try to make it very focused. So I create a matrix in Excel where it's like the name of the person, maybe their body, myself, and then on the other side, the same people. So then I clarify expectations is a two-way street. I have expectations on you, you have expectations on me, and the other way. So if I have a body that is going to help me with the onboarding process, like the body has expectations on you, you have expectations on them, the body has expectations on me. And I just walk through every box and just say, okay, tell me, what are your expectations on me? So I set the rules at the beginning. We're not allowed to fight it. We're not allowed to ask questions, clarifying questions to try to understand, but we're here to listen. And so in my experience, it works very well, very fast to set expectations very, very clearly. And then if there's anything that, hey, I don't know, I'm not sure, okay, we're going to have follow-up meetings for 3 months, 6 months. The most important is that the new person or the person that is starting feels supported, welcome, understood. And so I always say, how many times do you want to meet to make sure that the expectations are absolutely clear? And my experience is only 2 times. or three maybe. Depends on how bigger it's. If it's a bigger team that needs to be part of this expectation meetings, it's usually three. Um, but once it's very clear, and then they can all have access to that Excel spreadsheet. I've even seen them using it as like, oh, we agree that you were gonna communicate to me on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis, and I haven't received it. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. Blah blah blah. So it makes it very clear, very transparent, and I recommend it.
I would add lead by example. So that's a different way of communicating, whereas you're not necessarily being prescriptive, but you're showing what if you show up on time, if you do things to a high standard, if you are honest and open and ask for feedback, that sets the tone that you expect other people in general to follow. If you do the opposite, then you can't expect them to do what, to be honest if you're not.
Yeah. So lead by example is something that's super important. Javier, have you got anything to add to that?
I love the expectations meeting. I'm going to copy that. But yeah, it's something that definitely needs time, needs investment of time to get to that agreement, and I love the both ways, because in previous companies and in this one as well, we have this manager score. So I receive feedback as well from my team, in anonymized, but I receive feedback, and it's also super valuable. And then you learn, maybe I didn't clarify expectations with this member of the team. Yeah. Sometimes it's a matter of seniority or a matter of just communication.
Communication is so important, isn't it? It's the thing that we always come back to time and time again on these sessions. There's one more question that I wanna ask, which is from Raj, and it says, "What should I expect from my HR business partner when it comes to managing a new team?" So we've spoken a lot about what you guys are going to be doing in your first 90 days and how you start strong. But what is typical in terms of support that you should expect from the organization towards you? Let's make that a bit broader.
If it's a very fancy organization, you might have some psychological tools, even some evaluation of the team. Like I have a Gallup Strengths assessment, and I have also the Insight Discovery. So we know the interaction styles from each other. So it's super helpful for me to understand that, because it allows me to adapt to the communication style and understand better. But if you don't have that, I mean, obviously your HR business partner might establish some regular meetings to assess the team and provide some insight. But yeah, definitely the quality of that differs from one company to the other based on whether or not they are implementing these kind of tools.
Thank you, Javier. And finally, Akivia.
Yeah, what I usually go for to my business partner, to my HR business partner, is to try to understand the different rules in different countries. You cannot assume that the HR rules are the same in every country. So I try to go and figure out on top of what you mentioned, Javier. I think that's a very fancy organization, but and it's very useful. But sometimes you want to know, okay, what can I tell them, like sick leave or some very practical elements, and it depends. It changes from country to country. So I don't memorize them all. I always forget. So I always ask my HR business partner, hey, I don't wanna step any line or anything like that. So that's yeah. I think that's a very basic expectation, but it's a very real one.
Yeah. So we have come to the end of the live Q&A session. That was really insightful and interesting, and we got through a lot of questions there. I'm gonna now give you all a chance to have a break, a drink, while I jump over into Slido. So I'm gonna just share my screen. So guys, what we really love is to know what you take away from these sessions. So if you're looking at Slido right now, you're going to have a poll that is going to pop up on the screen, and it's going to ask you this question: what did you learn? So please take a second to let us know, what did you learn? What are your key takeaways? What are you going to go away and implement when you're starting strong in your next role? So I'm looking now over at the screen, and I can just see with him. How to start strong. With was a really good one, Akivia. The importance of feedback. Yeah, over and over again, that always comes up. So I think expectations agreement, that was a really nice practical piece of advice as well there. So that was also really, really good. Change management, and bringing people along with you. We spoke about that, right? It's never imposed from the top, but actually bringing people along with you when it comes to change. We've got listen, respect, fast. Somebody just wrote fast. So I think that means have a fast impact. So I would like to know now, there's another poll that should be coming up. Will you be attending the next session? I'm about to share with you a bit more info on what the next session is going to be. So far I can only see yes on the screen, which is telling us that we're doing a really good job. So thank you all, everybody. Thank you to our amazing panel. I want to let you know that the next session is going to be in November, and this one is also another hot topic. We're going to be talking about mastering performance. So those tricky performance management conversations, how you manage the team based on performance, objective setting. We're going to be diving deeper into that. So register now for that one, or follow the page on LinkedIn to get the latest updates. And another thing that I just want to share with you, what we've been working on behind the scenes here at Elemed, are a suite of assessments. So the world of work is changing. We all know that. And we're currently building an assessment to help you know, are your skills future ready? So are you basically working on the right things to make sure that your skill set is future proof? There's AI coming, the world of regulation is changing, the world of quality is changing, business is becoming more important. We're hearing more and more conversations around communication over and over again. How well do you stack up versus what the future is going to need? You can join this waitlist. If you scan this QR code, we're going to be inviting just a select beta group that are going to trial it for us. So if you're interested in getting like first-hand access, give us your feedback, help us build this, please scan this, drop us your email address, and we will be in touch. And finally, if you really enjoyed this session, but you haven't seen any of the other 11 sessions, because now this is session number 12, you can scan this QR code. It will take you to our website where you can see recordings of all other Future Leader sessions available to watch on demand. Remember, on each of these sessions, we have amazing leaders who have set aside their time to talk about their real experiences. This is real life mentoring, real life coaching from people that are doing the job that you want to be doing. There is so much gold and information in these sessions. Please take the time to have a look, and I will see you all on the 20th of November for the next episode of Future Leaders. That's it. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.